She spent years suffering in silence, until the day she finally rose. They thought her age made her weak, but her strength was something they never saw coming. This is the moment her quiet pain turned into the loudest justice. Karen Harper sat in the plush leather chair of her penthouse apartment, overlooking the skyline of New York City. At 75, she was a woman who had lived through decades of change, economic, social, and personal, and had come out on top. She wasn't just wealthy. She was sharp, calculated, and unyielding. Her life had been built on hard work, grit, and a relentless pursuit of success. Now, in her later years, she found herself fighting a battle she hadn't anticipated, one for her wealth, her dignity, and perhaps her soul. Karen had grown up in a time when women were expected to stay in the background, but that never suited her. Raised in a small town in upstate New York, she had seen firsthand the power of money and influence. Determined to change her destiny, she moved to the city in her early 20s with little more than ambition and a sharp mind. She climbed the corporate ladder with unparalleled determination, building a fortune in the real estate industry. Her name became synonymous with business acumen and shrewd investments. But despite her financial success, Karen's personal life had never been as easy to manage. She had married young, a union that had seemed like a fairy tale at the time, but ended in a bitter divorce when her husband was caught in a scandal that ruined his career. She was left to raise their only son, Jack, alone. The responsibility had been overwhelming at times, but Karen never wavered. She poured all her energy into ensuring that Jack had everything she never did: a stable upbringing, opportunities, and most importantly, the belief that he could be more than his circumstances. Jack Harper, now 35, had grown up in a life of privilege, but it was clear from an early age that he had a different set of values from his mother. Karen had always been a strict, no-nonsense parent, teaching Jack to value hard work and integrity. But Jack, with his good looks and charm, had always found it easier to navigate the world with a smile than with effort. While Karen worked tirelessly to build her empire, Jack took a more relaxed approach to life. His academic performance was average at best, and though he had his mother's wealth at his disposal, he seemed more interested in enjoying the fruits of her labor than contributing to it. As Jack entered adulthood, his behavior became more concerning. Karen had always suspected that he didn't appreciate the sacrifices she had made, but the truth was far worse than she imagined. It started with small things: unanswered calls, avoiding conversations about her business, and a growing disinterest in family matters. But soon, Karen began to realize that Jack was secretly making plans of his own, plans that didn't involve her but rather her wealth. It was a bitter pill to swallow, the realization that her only son was plotting against her. The very person she had dedicated her life to protecting and providing for was, in return, plotting to undermine everything she had worked for. Karen had spent decades building her fortune, and now she would have to fight to keep it, against the one person she had trusted the most. Jack's motivations were clear. He had grown accustomed to the lifestyle of luxury, and now he wanted more. His need for money and power was insatiable. Karen, who had once been his biggest supporter, was now the target of his greed. His actions were subtle at first, an attempt to manipulate the family finances here, a little deception there, but the stakes were about to get much higher. Karen knew she couldn't trust him anymore. Her instincts told her that Jack was not the man she had raised. But Karen wasn't one to back down. She had spent her life navigating challenges with intelligence and precision, and this would be no different. If Jack wanted her fortune, he would have to go through her, and she wasn't about to let him have it without a fight. Karen Harper sat in her study, staring at the papers in front of her. The financial reports she had asked her lawyer to prepare were more than just numbers on a page. They were the unsettling truth. Karen's eyes flicked to the framed photograph on her desk. A younger Jack, smiling in a graduation cap, his arm draped around her shoulders. That image seemed so distant now. She had once believed that everything she worked for, every late night, every deal, every sacrifice was for him. But now, her only son had betrayed her. It had started innocuously enough. A few missed calls here and there, Jack's usual evasiveness when it came to discussing her business, but over time, Karen's suspicions began to mount. Her instincts, honed over decades of ruthless negotiations and boardroom battles, told her something wasn't right. It wasn't until she decided to check her private financial accounts, something she hadn't done in years, that the first signs of his betrayal became clear. Jack had been siphoning off money from her trust accounts, redirecting funds to personal investments under the guise of loans he needed to fund his new ventures. At first, the amounts were small enough that they could have been overlooked, minor withdrawals that seemed almost negligible. But as she went further back through the records, the scale of Jack's deception began to unfold. The sums were staggering, and the transactions were being made in secrecy, with Jack's name attached to everything. It was no longer a matter of innocent mismanagement. This was deliberate. Jack had been systematically draining her resources for months, if not years, without her knowledge. Karen's heart pounded as she picked up the phone and dialed his number. He answered on the third ring, his voice casual, as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom. What's up?" Jack asked, a slight edge of weariness in his voice. "Don't what's up me, Jack," Karen replied, her voice cool and controlled, masking the storm of emotion brewing beneath the surface. "I know what you've been doing. I've seen the records." There was a long pause on the other end. Jack didn't immediately respond, and Karen could hear the slight shift in his breathing, as if he were considering how to frame his next words. "Mom, it's not what you think," he said finally, his voice steady but defensive. "I've been helping out with some investments trying to grow things, you know? It's just business." "Business?" Karen echoed, her tone laced with disbelief. "Jack, you've been taking my money, my hard-earned money, and you think it's just business?" "Well, Jack began, but Karen cut him off. "You've been lying to me," she said, her voice rising with anger. "You've been stealing from me. All this time I've been trusting you, and you've been using me to line your pockets." Jack's voice grew sharper, a hint of frustration creeping in. "It's not stealing, Mom. It's called being smart. You've got plenty. I'm just trying to build something of my own. You always taught me to think big, didn't you?" Karen's breath caught in her throat. Her son's words stung, but not as much as the realization that she had underestimated him. She had thought Jack was just a little naive, that he didn't quite understand the value of hard work. But this was something darker. This was greed. This was betrayal. "I never taught you to steal from me," Karen said, her voice steady but cold. "You've crossed a line, Jack, and I won't let you get away with it." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Jack spoke again, his voice lower this time. "What are you going to do, Mom? You've got all the money in the world, and I'm your only son. You can't just cut me off." Karen's fingers tightened around the phone as a plan began to form in her mind. Jack had underestimated her, just as he had underestimated the lengths she would go to protect what was hers. He was her son, but this betrayal was unforgivable. "I can and I will," Karen said, her voice calm, yet filled with a steely determination. "You've made your choice, Jack. Now I'll make mine." The confrontation with Jack had been intense, but Karen remained calm in the aftermath. She had expected his anger, expected his threats. In fact, she had been counting on it. Jack's bluster was nothing new. What mattered now was not the fight itself, but how she would use his desperation against him. He had underestimated her, and that was a mistake she was going to exploit. Karen spent the next few days in strategic isolation. She had always believed in the power of information, the importance of knowing your enemy better than they knew themselves. And now her enemy was Jack, her son, yes, but still someone who had betrayed her trust and tried to take what wasn't his. He would have to learn that there were consequences for that kind of greed. She knew Jack would try to fight back. He wouldn't just accept defeat quietly. His arrogance wouldn't allow it. But she also knew he was reckless, impulsive, and prone to acting without fully thinking through the consequences. Karen, on the other hand, had a lifetime of experience in maneuvering through the complexities of business, and she was going to use every ounce of that skill now. Her first step was to regain control of the narrative. She had to neutralize Jack's leverage before he could try to spin things in his favor. The media loved a scandal, especially one involving family feuds and money. If Jack tried to drag their personal conflict into the public eye, she would make sure he didn't have the upper hand. Karen called her trusted PR manager, Elliot Grant, who had handled all her corporate affairs for over a decade. He knew how to manage the press, how to handle crises, and most importantly, how to control a story before it had a chance to spiral out of control. She needed to make sure that if Jack tried to take this to the media, it would backfire on him. "Elliot, I need you to prepare a statement," Karen said, her voice steady. "It's important we get ahead of this before Jack can spin it into something else. We need to make it clear that I'm taking steps to protect my business interests and my legacy. If Jack tries to paint himself as the victim, I want him to look like the opportunist he is." Elliot hesitated for only a moment. "Understood. I'll work with the legal team and get something drafted. We'll keep it measured but firm. Let's make sure the public knows the truth." Karen nodded. "Good. I'm counting on you." Once the PR measures were in place, Karen turned her attention back to the business side of things. Jack's theft wasn't just an emotional betrayal. It was a direct threat to her empire. And while she had already begun transferring her wealth into secure accounts, she needed to ensure that Jack couldn't do any more damage from within her companies. She knew he had connections in the business world. He'd made a few investments, had a few influential friends. He had built a small network of people who were loyal to him, but Karen wasn't worried. She knew that loyalty was often as flimsy as the promises people made to each other. When money was involved, people were quick to switch sides. Karen called a meeting with Tom Myers, her chief financial officer, and Sophie Lang, her head of operations. These were the two people who had been with her through thick and thin, and she trusted them more than anyone else in her company. She needed them to help her secure her position. "I want you to begin auditing every transaction Jack has been involved in since he joined the company," Karen said, her voice firm. "I want to know exactly what he's been doing. If he's been using company resources for his own gain, we need to cut him off completely." Tom nodded, his face grim. "I'll get the team on it. We'll comb through every record, every expense. We'll find out where he's been funneling money." Sophie, who had a sharp mind for operations, spoke next. "We'll also need to tighten security. If Jack has any allies left in the company, we'll need to root them out quickly. He won't go down without a fight, and we need to be ready for that." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I know he won't go down without a fight, but we'll make sure he has no room to maneuver. This is our company, not his. I've built this empire from the ground up, and I'm not going to let him destroy it." After the meeting, Karen spent the rest of the afternoon drafting a plan for the future of her company. She began outlining the steps she would take to ensure that Jack's influence was removed permanently. The trust was already in place, and the assets were secure, but there were still loose ends. People in her inner circle who might be vulnerable to Jack's persuasion. Karen needed to make sure that everyone in her orbit was loyal, and anyone who wasn't would have to be dealt with. That evening, as she reviewed her notes, Karen felt a rare sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, control, and reclaiming what was rightfully hers. Jack had thought he could undermine her. He had thought he could steal from her without consequence. But now he would learn just how wrong he was. Karen Harper had never been one to let a challenge defeat her, and she would make sure Jack understood that his betrayal had set into motion a game that he could never win. The atmosphere in Karen Harper's penthouse had grown heavy with anticipation. The pieces of her plan had been set in motion, and now she was watching carefully, waiting for the inevitable escalation. Jack had always been quick to act when he felt cornered, and she knew it was only a matter of time before he would come after her more aggressively. She wasn't wrong. It started with a phone call, an urgent, almost frantic message left on her voicemail. Jack's voice, usually calm and confident, was now laced with desperation. "Mom, I need to talk to you. We need to sort this out before it gets worse. You don't understand what you're doing. If you keep going down this path, you'll lose everything. I'm your son. You can't shut me out like this." Karen listened to the message but didn't respond right away. She had anticipated this. Jack was no longer playing the long game. He was desperate. She could hear the cracks in his carefully constructed facade, the mask of entitlement and arrogance slipping away. This wasn't the same man she had once tried to protect. This was someone who was cornered, and when someone like Jack was backed into a corner, they became dangerous. Karen had already ensured that her wealth was secure. Assets were moved, investments shielded, and Jack's access to her fortune was effectively cut off. But that didn't mean Jack couldn't cause trouble. He knew the inner workings of her business, and despite being locked out of the financial side of things, he could still do damage by undermining her operations. And that's exactly what he intended to do. The next few days were filled with unsettling reports. Karen received emails from her legal team about Jack's increasing attempts to manipulate people within the company. He was reaching out to key executives, stirring up discontent, trying to rally support from people who had once been loyal to her. Some were swayed by his charm, others by his threats. It was clear that Jack wasn't going to back down easily. Karen couldn't let this go on any longer. The board meetings were coming up, and Jack had already started planting seeds of doubt. He was trying to position himself as the rightful heir to her empire, telling anyone who would listen that Karen was growing too old to manage the company, that she was losing touch with the times. He knew exactly what buttons to push, especially with the investors who had always been wary of Karen's unconventional methods. He was playing a dangerous game, and if he wasn't stopped soon, he could potentially turn her own board against her. Karen called another urgent meeting, this time with Vera Smith, her lawyer, and Elliot Grant, her PR manager. They had already prepared the groundwork to protect her in the event of a public fallout, but now Karen needed more. She needed to neutralize Jack's influence once and for all. "I've been getting reports that Jack's been making moves within the company," Karen said, leaning forward as she spoke, her eyes sharp and calculating. "He's trying to turn the board against me. I won't let him ruin everything I've worked for." Vera's expression was serious, but there was a glint of approval in her eyes. "We've anticipated this, Karen. He's playing his hand, and we've already put legal blocks in place to prevent him from taking any direct control. But he's still a threat, and we need to stop him before he causes irreversible damage." Karen nodded, her mind already working through the possibilities. "I'm pulling the trigger on the next phase of the plan. We need to neutralize his allies, get rid of any potential leverage he has within the company. Jack has no loyalty to anyone. He's using people to try and get what he wants. We need to show them that the consequences of following him are worse than staying loyal to me." Elliot chimed in, "And the media response should be swift. We can't let Jack frame this as a personal dispute. We need to position it as an example of how unchecked greed and entitlement can tear a family and a business apart. We'll make sure that he's portrayed as the aggressor, not the victim." Karen's lips curved into a faint smile. "That's exactly what I need. Let's make sure Jack has no room to maneuver. He's underestimated me for too long." As the meeting concluded, Karen felt a sense of finality settle in. The next move would be crucial, and she wasn't going to leave anything to chance. She knew Jack would escalate, but this time she would be one step ahead. That evening, Jack arrived at her penthouse unannounced. He was angrier than ever, his face flushed with frustration. The moment he stepped into the living room, he didn't even wait for pleasantries. "Mom, this has gone far enough. You can't keep doing this. I'm not going to let you destroy everything." Karen didn't flinch. "You've already destroyed it, Jack. You've taken what wasn't yours, and now you're going to face the consequences." Jack took a step closer, his fists clenched. "You think you can get away with this? I'll make sure the board knows what you've been doing. You'll lose everything. I'll make sure of it." Karen looked at him with cold, unblinking eyes. "You're right about one thing, Jack. You will make sure of it. But it won't be what you think. This is where your game ends." For the first time in a long while, Jack looked uncertain. His jaw tightened, but his eyes darted around the room, as if looking for an escape. Karen had cornered him, and now there was no way out. His threats had no weight, and his alliances were crumbling. As Jack turned and stormed out of the penthouse, Karen knew this battle was nearing its end. Jack had made one last attempt to take what was hers, but it was too late. His desperation would be his undoing. The days after Jack's last outburst were filled with tension, but Karen had long since learned to manage stress with precision. She knew that the final confrontation was coming, and it would not be a moment of emotion, but of strategy. Jack had played his cards, but now it was her turn to deal the final blow. He had underestimated her every step of the way, and now the time had come for her to show him just how much she was willing to sacrifice to protect everything she had worked for. Karen's team had done their part. Vera had ensured that all legal barriers were in place to block Jack from gaining any further access to her assets or company. Elliot had prepared the public response, an airtight statement, framed perfectly to shift the narrative and leave Jack without a leg to stand on if he tried to publicly slander her. And Tom and Sophie had rooted out the remaining people in the company who were still loyal to Jack, severing those ties before he could build any kind of resistance. Jack, meanwhile, had been growing increasingly desperate. Karen had heard through her network that he was making final attempts to sway the board, using his charm and his carefully cultivated image to try and win them over. But it was too late. The board had already seen the truth that Jack wasn't the future of the company, that his self-serving actions had been slowly sabotaging everything his mother had built. Finally, the day of the decisive board meeting arrived. Karen walked into the sleek conference room of her company, her presence commanding the attention of everyone seated around the large glass table. She had dressed with purpose, her sharp black suit, her carefully styled hair, and the calm expression on her face all conveyed the same message. This was her domain, and she would defend it to the last. Jack was already there, sitting at the head of the table. His face was drawn, his posture tense. He had clearly been preparing for a showdown. He was flanked by a few of his remaining allies within the company, but Karen could see the cracks. He was losing support, and his confidence was beginning to wane. His plan had failed. "Jack," Karen said coldly as she took her seat, her gaze never leaving her son, "I think we both know why we're here today." Jack met her eyes, his jaw clenched. He was trying to maintain control, but the signs of panic were unmistakable. "Mom, you've gone too far. This isn't just about the company. It's personal now. You're making a mistake." Karen leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but resolute. "The mistake was yours, Jack. You chose greed over loyalty. You thought you could use me and take what I built, but you were wrong. The company isn't yours. It never was." The room fell into silence. Jack's eyes flickered with anger, but also with something else, fear. For the first time, Karen saw the cracks in his facade. He had been so sure that he could take control, but now the reality of the situation was dawning on him. The game was over. "You think you can just shut me out?" Jack's voice rose, desperate. "I'm your son. I deserve this. Everything you have, I deserve." Karen's eyes narrowed. "No, Jack. You don't deserve anything. You think inheritance is a right, but it's earned. And you haven't earned anything. You've betrayed me, you've betrayed this company, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." The room remained still, and Karen's words hung in the air like an indictment. She could feel the weight of the moment, the culmination of years of work, the sacrifices she had made, and the cold, calculated decisions that had led her here. Jack opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, Vera, her lawyer, stood up and placed a thick folder on the table. "I think it's time we move past the rhetoric and get to the facts," Vera said, her voice calm but authoritative. She glanced at Karen before continuing. "This is a summary of all the illegal transactions Jack has made over the past year. We've also compiled evidence that shows Jack's attempts to manipulate company funds and his efforts to turn certain executives against the board. We have all the proof we need." Jack's face turned pale as Vera handed out copies of the documents. His eyes flicked nervously from one person to the next as the board members began to look over the evidence. He could no longer hide behind his charming facade. The proof was undeniable. Karen's voice was unwavering as she addressed the room. "Jack's actions have put the future of this company in jeopardy. I've worked my entire life to build it into what it is today, and I won't let him destroy it for his own selfish desires." Jack was silent, his chest heaving with anger, but the room was turning against him. The remaining few allies he had were now looking uncomfortable, exchanging uneasy glances. They knew the truth. Jack had overplayed his hand, and now he was on the losing side. "This is a business, Jack," Karen continued. "It's not a playground for your personal vendettas. And as of today, I am formally removing you from any position of power within this company. Your access to company funds has been revoked. You will no longer have any claim to my wealth or the business I've built." The finality of her words struck like a hammer. Jack stood up abruptly, his face red with fury. "You can't do this. I'll take you to court. I'll..." "No, Jack," Karen cut him off, her voice cold. "You're done." With that, the board unanimously voted to expel Jack from the company. His shares were frozen, his access to the business cut off entirely. As Karen walked out of the meeting, she felt an overwhelming sense of relief. A weight lifted from her shoulders. Jack's betrayal had cost him everything. In the days following the board meeting, Karen Harper allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She had won. Jack was out of the company. His access to her wealth was severed, and the last of his allies within the business had been dismissed. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, was now secure once again. But victory, she realized, didn't come without its toll. The phone calls, the emails, and the legal paperwork continued to pour in, but Karen didn't feel the rush of triumph she had expected. Instead, there was an empty feeling, a quiet hollow in her chest. She had succeeded in protecting what was hers, but at what cost? The war with her son had left her with nothing but ashes. She had lost the future she had once imagined with Jack by her side. That future had been built on dreams, on family, and on trust, but those dreams had shattered the moment Jack chose greed over loyalty. The evening after the meeting, Karen sat alone in her penthouse, staring out over the city skyline. The lights of the buildings twinkled in the distance, but they no longer seemed to shine with the same warmth they once had. The city was vast and impersonal, like the empire she had built, successful, but at the expense of something deeper. She had often told herself that she had no time for weakness, that emotion was a distraction, and that the business world was cutthroat. But now, in the quiet of her apartment, she felt the weight of her choices. She had cut Jack off completely. His share of the company had been revoked. His investments were null and void. Any lingering illusion of family business was now gone. And though she knew she had done what was necessary, it still hurt. Jack wasn't just her son. He was the one person she had loved unconditionally. The one person she had poured